This is Mike Dilk of Relax Back UK.
This is UK Health Radio, and thank you for joining me, Mike Dilk, on the Relax Back UK show. What's this week's topic? Here's a clue.
It's an unloved organ in the sense that we can't see it. It's not a quick win for a lot of us. We maybe are slightly embarrassed to talk about it.
Well, it's our gut, and what's in it and how what's in it can affect all kinds of our health issues. We hear from presenter Amanda Hamilton and also from Dr. Stephen Robinson, who really is at the sharp end of research on how our microbiota can affect many aspects of our life. In particular, his research is on cancer and how our gut might influence that disease.
We became interested in how the microbiota might regulate how cancer grows. So most of the studies we've been doing have been focusing around how changes in the microbiota might affect how we've been focusing on breast cancer, but how breast cancer might develop or how it might progress in an individual.
It is absolutely fascinating, and the research that's currently happening excites me enormously, and I hope you as well.
Relax Back UK is run by my daddy.
It's a while ago now, but I very much enjoyed my chat with Amanda Hamilton. She's a very experienced presenter on topics of nutrition. And I started off by admitting that my knowledge on guts and gut health was pretty much non-existent. So I just asked for a very simple introduction.
Okay, well, let me give you a kind of gut 101 then. So we've all got one. When we're talking about gut, we're often talking about this thing called the microbiome, which is a collective name given to all the bacteria, sometimes called microbiota, that reside principally in the gut, not solely, but principally in the gut. And just to give you a bit of perspective, the microbes or the bacteria in your body outnumber your cells 10 to 1. So that should be a bit of an indication as to how important they are. And the gut isn't just about digestion or going to the toilet, which is what a lot of us would think. Way back in the day, Hippocrates, the founding father of modern medicine, talked about the fact that the gut is the root of all disease, and science seems to be saying exactly the same thing. The gut is really important for your immune system, for your mood, for your weight, for controlling inflammation, for managing disease risk. It is hugely important. These microbes are very much like a kind of frontline army. Think about them like that, you know.
Well, I must admit, when I first think of gut health, I think of the classic, suffering from constipation or diarrhea or indigestion, these kind of things.
Yeah, it's a natural thought.
Potentially a lot more than just having been uncomfortable and suffering from those things, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I think because it's an unloved organ in the sense that we can't see it, it's not a quick win for a lot of us. We maybe are slightly embarrassed to talk about it. But yes, certainly it's not just about those sort of IBS or uncomfortable digestive type symptoms. It's much wider than that in terms of the impact.
So I guess, what leads on to the question, what is a healthy gut? And then maybe more importantly, how do we get it?
Yeah, indeed, very important. Well, a healthy gut is one that you probably don't need to think about too much. It just does the job. And your wider health symptoms or health outcomes are also good. So it's not just about having good digestion, like going to the toilet every day and having no bloating and kind of all that being easy and something you don't need to worry about, but other things being in good health too, because as I said, it basically impacts on everything. When it comes to how to support our gut, well, nutritionally, obviously that's my focus. What we need is a natural diet, not surprising. So we've evolved over...
There's a lot of talk about fermented foods.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of Googling, and things like sauerkraut seem to pop up quite a lot. Is that something you suggest to people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if we were to imagine it like a pyramid, the base of the pyramid needs to be regular natural foods. The least processed food, the better. So that gives our fibre and means that our gut's not having to kind of deal with things that may be more difficult to digest. And we're certainly not evolved to digest a lot of processed food. And then working up that pyramid, things like fermented foods. which is where the foods themselves can deliver some what we'd call probiotic benefits, so beneficial bacteria within the food itself. And fermenting is something that humans have done for an awful long time.
Just rewind a little bit. It's probiotic. What's that?
So it means delivering beneficial bacteria. So there's actually beneficial bacteria contained in something like fermented cabbage, or fermented milk like kefir. These are products that are consumed lots of places in the world, not just here in the UK, but there's a lot of attention on them now because we know that they have some of this benefit. But
I've got a favourite thing I like to ingest, which is fermented. I'm assuming that's not on the list. That's beer.
It's definitely not on the list, I'm afraid. Too much sugar in there, and alcohol. It causes a whole host of other issues. So no, it wouldn't be. Nice try. A lot of people try that one.
Thank you. And also I came across something else which is kind of hard to do anything about in later life, and a suggestion that if you're breastfed as a baby, your gut health might be better.
Well, yes, the evidence is that the first 1,000 days of your life are when a lot of the microbiome, so this collective name for the the bacteria in the gut, is kind of set up, if you like. And yes, having a natural birth and being breastfed definitely gives you an advantage there, as does not having much in the way of antibiotics, which are miraculous medicine, but unfortunately do have an impact on gut health. But as an adult, clearly you can't do anything about it. We can't do anything about it any time of our life. What happens. But I think what I like to focus on is what I call the fridge staples. So getting the basics right, because yes, absolutely, go out and eat sauerkraut, go and enjoy it. But what we need is the daily habits to be right.
Sauerkraut? Did you just say that?
If you do enjoy it, some people do. I'm not going to start pushing fermented cabbage down people's throats. What I would like to say is getting the fridge staples right, as I said, is kind of important. And I think one of the areas that's worth highlighting is cow's milk can be problematic. That's down to a number of factors. Cow's milk allergy, which is could be up to 20 different things actually within a cow's milk allergy. But casein being the common thing, so the milk protein being the problem, or lactose being the problem. And moving from cows to goat's milk means that those two issues are significantly reduced. So there's big digestive advantages going to that.
We use goat's milk in our family. My little boy gets eczema sometimes, so we try and allay that with cow's milk. But I never really thought about it being better for the gut. I mean, how can that be? Is it less pasteurised or something than is goat's milk less pasteurised than cow's milk?
It's nothing. It's nothing like that. But I've done exactly the same in my family. My daughter got eczema almost instantly when she started drinking cow's milk, and I switched to goat's milk and it went away. That's down to usually a cow's milk allergy that she would grow out of or he would grow out of, but it certainly shows you the strength of the switch, if you like. If someone is lactose sensitive or lactose intolerant, there is less of an issue drinking goat's milk. But also the fat globules within goat's milk are also easier to digest. And here's another word for you. It contains prebiotics. So we talked about probiotics, but prebiotics are think about it like a fertilizer for the good bacteria. The gut is often referred to as a kind of gut garden in my world, because you have to kind of tend to it in lots of different ways. So when you're delivering specific fiber types into the gut, it's almost like giving them the best food possible to then thrive, the good bacteria to thrive. So some of the easiest ways to think about it is like you've got this kind of garden with all this diversity, and we need to keep the bad stuff down and the good stuff up. We all know that the soil, the terrain is really important there, but also fertilizer helps, and that's what these prebiotics.
I can imagine that. Is there any actually published research that says that potentially goat's milk is better than cow's milk or this kind of thing for your gut?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There is tons of research out there, and goat milk, of course, you might be surprised to know, is actually the most commonly drunk milk in the world, so it's not a fad in any way. But yes, I mean, if you want to dig into the research, the St. Helens Farm website would be your best place to get that, or somebody can contact me if they want, Amanda Nourish on Instagram or amandahamilton.com. There's a great amount of research on this.
I certainly would. I'd like to put some links on my blog to research about that if possible, for sure. Because I think it's good to do that if people want to find out a bit more. And actually, I'd like to have a dig around in the research as well.
It's really interesting, yeah.
And I think that'll be a good thing to do, for sure.
Right, I'll send you the kind of compendium of all the research that's pulled together recently. And, I don't speak out about anything unless the research is really solid. And I've obviously had my own direct links with this, having moved my daughter from one milk to another milk. And I think that there's a jump towards plant-based milks, which, is all well and good, but it's not the same. It's not the same as what I'd call more of a food, which is the calcium-rich, B vitamin-rich milk that we get from a goat. So, I think it's important.
The jump to other sorts of milk substitutes could be like a vegan thing.
Exactly.
Making that go forward a bit, I would suggest.
Exactly. And I think whilst a vegan diet can be really healthy, there are some missing bits, B12 being kind of a critical one, but also when it comes to, being a parent, I think about calcium. When your children are growing, the only way you can grow as an adult is out the way. Whereas actually, and also in postmenopausal women, things like that, or the elderly, we do need to manage our skeletons really well. So definitely do not discount the milks that are maybe more traditional and widely used elsewhere in the world. It's something to really think about. But I'll send you the research, because I think it's
I know you're a bit short of time, but before you finish, could you just maybe give us, if people are listening and think, I'd like to find out a bit more about gut health, kind of a go-to website or a go-to place?
I would go to the St. Helens Farm website for the information related to goat's milk. And the best place I can probably say is, because I can't think of one single place, there's a gut health project, which you might want to Google, but you can get in touch with me and I'll send people what they need to know.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Amanda, thank you
so much.
Because I think people really will find that interesting and hopefully useful. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Relax Back UK. Run by my daddy.
I enjoyed speaking with Amanda a lot. She spoke about some additional info she would send to me, and I've got that. And I've gone through it, and I will actually put it on my blog if I can, which is on my website, relaxbackuk.com. Now, that additional information, there's a report called The Benefits of Consuming Goat's Milk, written by a couple of people, with the lead being Charlotte Harden. And she is part of the Centre for Food Innovation Academic Group at Sheffield Hallam University, and also the Molecular Gastroenterology Research Group at the University of Sheffield. Now, I can't tell actually if it's published in a peer-reviewed journal. I don't think it is, but I'm not sure. And the report does actually refer to a lot of published papers. And in the conclusion, there's a section which I'll just read out. Goats differ from cows in terms of their anatomy, physiology, and product biochemistry. These differences support the contention that goat's milk offers many unique qualities for human nutrition. However, the authors recommend a comprehensive scientific study to fully examine the hypoallergenic and therapeutic significance of goat's milk. So I do feel that the report sent to me by Amanda has been rather sort of over interpreted as far as some of the benefits of goat's milk that she mentioned. Having said that, I drink goat's milk, and so do my family, but I don't think we can say that there's real hard evidence for it being better than cow's milk, although, anecdotally, such examples may exist. And as I said, indeed, me and my family drink it. Shortly, we'll hear from a scientist who doesn't deal in anecdotes, he deals in hard science. This is Dr. Stephen Robinson, and we'll hear about some of the research that is happening on the subject of guts and gut health.
Relax UK. Run by my daddy.
I was recently lucky enough to visit Dr. Stephen Robinson at the Quadrum Institute in Norwich, and he is very excited about how his research can potentially be very applicable to helping people with all kinds of health issues. He specifically looks at the possible connections between the gut biome and cancer, specifically breast cancer. And I started my visit with him by walking around the labs and having a look at some of the facilities they have.
Right, I'm having a visit to the Quadrum Institute in Norwich, and I'm being shown around by Dr. Stephen Robinson, and I've got my lab coat on, which very smartly says Quadrum Institute on, little badge on it, and I'm being shown around, and we're outside a door which says experimental kitchen. So what's that about?
So one of the things that we do at the Quadrum Institute, not me necessarily, but some of the other scientists study food pathogens, so microbes that might be in our food, and or how do the chemicals and things in the food that we eat, how do they affect the microbes in our gut. So we actually have a kitchen where some of the researchers will go to the supermarket and buy things and bring them into the laboratory and then prep them the way you would prep them, and then study how it affects the microbes that might be present in the food products, or how different components of the food that we eat might be affected by the way we prep them.
So this simulates how you and I might cook at home.
Yes.
I have to say, it looks a lot tidier than my kitchen at home.
Yeah, well, mine too.
But I get the idea. No, that's because there's no point testing stuff that isn't realistic. So
yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
And that's kind of the point of it.
Lovely. All right,
So
onwards.
Everything in there is kind of it's funny because they actually have knives in there,
Right.
so they can prep food, but they have to be under secondary containment so that people can't use them to do naughty things with, I guess.
Might make their lunch.
Yeah, make their lunch, that kind of thing.
Okay, right. Now we've come into
We've
the kind
entered
of what
the main lab where most of the science is done. It's an open plan laboratory, which is really nice. The nice thing about the Institute is it brings together all of the researchers, scientists, bioinformaticians, data crunchers into one building so that we can do the things that we need to do. And the open plan is basically designed to facilitate interactions between the different elements of those things that I just discussed. So
Right.
we talk to each other, we know what each other are doing.
And that's important. You've got to know what each other's doing
Absolutely.
for collaborations and the advancement of knowledge. And so let me just describe this lab a little bit. It looks exactly how you think a lab should
Yeah,
look.
it does.
It's kind of stuff with equipment that looks expensive.
Yeah, a lot of it is.
Yeah, the thing. Okay, so the thing nearest me is a centrifuge.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. I know what that does.
Yeah.
What else have we got nearby? Let's just have a look
We've
at
got
some.
microscopes.
Okay, let's have a stroll down this.
We have computers, we have microscopes, we have centrifuges, we have water baths. Everything's quite expensive, as you might imagine. Most science is quite expensive to conduct. These little instruments are what you call the pipettes, which we use to move small volumes. Each one of those costs about 200 pounds, basically.
All right, and there's a rack of a dozen there.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking at £1,000 or at least.
Science is expensive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
However, it's one of those things that I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, me too. It employs me.
Well, it employs you, but also it's important.
Yeah. So this little room on the side is where we work with. We call it our tissue culture facility. So inside here, so we got an extra layer of security. There's people now.
All right.
So we're supposed to change our lab coats when we come in here, but we just won't touch anything. These are two of my PhD students, Kate and Ali. Kate's nearly finished. Ali is in the first year of his PhD, so he's about 6-7 months in, something like that.
All right.
Yeah, he's just passed his probationary review. So
well done. Well
he's
done.
allowed to continue to be a PhD student.
So these guys are working in a hood, which is, well, can you describe what that is?
Yeah, so this is a laminar. It's actually both a biosafety cabinet and a laminar flow cabinet at the same time. So that means essentially it's a semi-sterile environment. So things in the environment, the things that we're doing in there, we need to keep sterile. So bacteria and things that are just naturally in the air won't go in. But also, if they're not working with anything dangerous at the moment, but if anything in there is dangerous, it won't get transmitted in the opposite direction either.
Okay.
So
It goes up these tubes in the ceiling, and then is dealt
it goes
with.
through. It goes through special filters that will capture anything that might be dangerous, and then the rest of the air goes into the environment after everything that is dangerous is captured.
Excellent.
So there's HEPA filters in there that catch any small particulates, or if there were bacteria in it or whatever, it would catch those.
All right. Well, we better leave these guys to get on with their work and continue having a nose around the lab. Thank you. Right, we're looking into another room now, which has machines that they're a little bit like the hoods we just saw, but slightly different. So, Stephen, can you explain how they're different and why?
These are hoods where we can control the environment inside. So in this case, they're pumping out any oxygen from them so that there's really low oxygen concentrations inside the hood. And the reason they do that is because we're at an institute that studies microbes, and a lot of the microbes that we would naturally find in our gut aren't exposed to normal oxygen levels. They're called anaerobic bacteria. So they wouldn't grow in a natural environment. So they'll only grow in an environment where we can control the oxygen levels.
Okay, so that's why it's like this, and I can see it actually looks quite difficult to use.
It looks fiddly. It's very fiddly.
But the gentleman there has got his hands inside this thing after going through some gloves to keep the oxygen out.
As like a boy in a bubble kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. So you're working in the bubble. You're on the outside of the bubble, but you're working in the bubble.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Right, we're now at the part of the lab. There's a couple of rows of benches here which are looked after by Dr. Robinson. This is his team. So tell me, what happens here?
Well, there's no one here at the second. A lot of people, as you just saw, some people are in the tissue culture room, some people are out in the lab, out in the offices doing computer work and that kind of thing. Got a couple of people on holiday at the moment. But this is where we do the science that we do.
This is the engine room. This is where it all happens.
Room, yeah. And I guess with respect to the institute, whose emphasis is really on figuring out how the bugs in our guts affect our health and affect how we respond to diseases and or develop diseases, we're interested in two things in particular. We're interested in how the bacteria that inhabit our guts affect how we respond to cancer, which is kind of the reason I wanted to come to the Institute, so we could study that with access to all of the researchers and facilities that we needed. But we also are quite interested in how the bugs in our guts affect how our vascular system, our blood vessels, etc., how they function.
Right.
Both normally, and also how if changes in our gut might affect how we develop things like cardiovascular disease.
And that could be related to all sorts of different diseases. Even treatment of cancer as well, maybe.
Absolutely.
After the lab tour, I sat down to speak a little bit more with Dr. Robinson, and he started off by explaining the different areas of research at the Quadrum Institute in Norwich.
So they're funding three core areas of research. We're broken into themes within the Institute. One is gut microbes and health. So how do the bacteria in our guts affect our health? That's actually the theme that I belong to. There's microbes in the food chain. So how do potential bacteria, etc., that might be in our food affect us? How can we control, pathogenic bacteria that might be present in our food? And then the other theme is looking at how do things that are in our food affect our microbiota.
Okay. All right. So those three things come together to make a very nice whole. So how long have scientists, people thought that gut bacteria might actually affect our health?
I guess I can't put an actual date on it, but it's been something that's rumbling along for a few years now. Maybe, really hot topic over the last 5 to 10 sort of years, and becoming really hot now. I mean, I hear about it in the news all the time now. You hear people are attributing a lot of diseases to changes in what we call our microbiota. So the bacteria, etc., the microorganisms that inhabit our guts.
Okay. So, and I've heard a lot on the media about that too, but hearing things on the media and actual real evidence are very different. So are we at the stage where there's real evidence now that it can affect things like cancer, depression, immune function, allergies, these kind of things?
Yes, I think we're at a stage now where there's definitely a lot of correlative studies out there. So many that we can't ignore it anymore. We definitely are at a stage where we can say that the bacteria in our guts are definitely affecting these different processes. And as you said, it's pretty much linked to everything now. So depression, cancer, things like asthma, the gut-brain axis. So not just depression, but mood, mental health, that sort of thing.
Okay, right. So, all right, our gut affects these things, which comes into the big question. What affects our gut then? How can we influence our gut to make ourselves better?
Well, it's affected by a lot of the things that we're exposed to. So the important thing, I think, to remember about the microbiota is that it's composed of lots of different bacteria living in harmony with each other, but also with us. So us being the host. So there's this really fine balance between the different types of bacterial species that are in the gut, but also they are living in symbiosis with our normal cells present within the gut, so the epithelial cells that take in the nutrients from your gut and that sort of thing.
And not just bacteria as well, presumably.
Oh yeah, it's not just bacteria. I mean, we say bacteria most of the time because it's certainly the biggest component of the microbiota, but it's also things like viruses, fungus, archaebacteria, those sorts of things.
Right. Protozoa, remembering back to my biology GCSE.
Absolutely, protozoa, yeah, absolutely. And those minor components are ever more studied, really. I mean, we have people here now that are looking at things like viruses, certainly viruses that affect the bacteria, can affect things like depression, ME. There's a group here studying how viruses present in the microbiota affect ME.
Okay. So, I mean, is it out of our control, or can we change it by changing our diet, by eating at different times, just having a different lifestyle?
Definitely we can control it with the things that we eat. Sometimes that area of research is called prebiotics. So I'm sure most of your listeners have heard of probiotics. So trying to change the balance of the bacteria in our gut by eating or drinking or administering healthy bacteria, things like lactobacillus, bifidobacteria, those kinds of things. These are the kind of, we associate them with being like, healthy bacteria present in our guts that do good things rather than bad things. And we can change the composition of the bacteria in our guts by changing the things that we eat. So prebiotics is an area of research where we're trying to feed the good bacteria in our gut to maintain them healthy so that we can be healthy. Okay. I think we're still at the early, what do we need to feed the bacteria for it to be a healthy microbiome? So
an unfair question would be something like, so is drinking more milk or having yogurt good for you? Does it make any difference? It's a bit of an unfair question at this stage.
Yes and no. I think there's pretty good evidence to suggest that if you're eating the right probiotics, which you might find in things like yogurt, you can help to maintain a healthy gut microbiota. But I think you need to be careful about, just pulling off something from the supermarket shelf and saying, this is going to give me a healthy microbiota. Right. I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done to, define what a healthy microbiota is, and designing products that actually help maintain a healthy microbiota.
Right, rather than just sell a lot.
Yeah, rather than just sell a lot.
I've heard on the media that how you're born influences your gut microbiota. Yeah. I have trouble with that phrase. Okay, but so whether if you have whether you're born with a C-section or born naturally. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in fact, the colleague that I share office with, Dr. Lindsay Hall, this is one of her main areas of research. So definitely. So when you're born, the diversity, the complexity of your microbiota it's a lot less than it is as you get older and progress through life. And where you pick up your first microbiota is when you transit through the birth canal. So, and a lot of the bacteria that you pick up as you transit through the birth canal are things that you're going to need to be healthy early on in your life. So if you're not transiting through the birth canal because you were born by C-section, you may not be picking up the bacteria, the good bacteria that you need. So there's a whole area of research at the moment trying to figure out, obviously not everyone can be born through the birth canal. Sometimes you have to have a C-section, for example. How can we administer to early infants the bacteria that they would have normally have picked up through the birth canal?
And do we know the sort of things that might face these babies if they're born with a C-section? Do they have more allergies or this kind of thing?
There's definitely evidence to suggest that is true. So some of the early bacteria that you pick up are early on in life are bifidobacteria, and bifidobacteria, as well as other members of the microbiota, one of their main functions is to properly prime your immune system so it's functioning the way it should.
Right.
And a lot of the things that you just talked about are associated with an immune system that isn't functioning properly. So things like asthma, allergies, that kind of thing. So that early life, one of the roles of the early life microbiota is to set up your immune system to function properly.
Right. The impression I'm getting is that actually it's extremely complicated, and you can't just say, I'm feeling a bit off today, I'm going to eat a bit of this, drink a bit of that, and I'm going to feel much less depressed, or it'll sort out my allergies. We're just not at that stage yet, are we?
No, we're not. Well, I think we're slowly getting there, but you're right, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Okay. As far as your lab specifically, can you tell us a couple of the things that you've got bubbling away that you're looking at?
Yeah, so my lab in particular. So I'm kind of new to the Institute, and one of the reasons I wanted to come to the Institute is because we recently became interested in how the microbiota regulates. So my background is cancer and angiogenesis, and we
just explain what that is.
Hopefully everyone knows what cancer is. Angiogenesis is new blood vessel growth, so how blood vessels form during diseases such as cancer, that kind of thing. And you need those blood vessels for your cancer to continue to grow, right? We became interested in how the microbiota might regulate how cancer grows, right? So most of the studies we've been doing have been focusing around how changes in the microbiota might affect how we've been focusing on breast cancer, but how breast cancer might develop or how it might progress in an individual. And we've been kind of approaching it from two angles. So a lot of breast cancer patients will be exposed to antibiotics. Mm-hmm. What do antibiotics do? They're designed to prevent infections, right? And a lot of breast cancer patients will be given a dose of antibiotics before they go for their surgery or after their surgery during their treatment, chemotherapy, hormone therapy, whatever. They might become immune compromised because of the treatment that they're getting. So they might be given antibiotics then, right, to prevent massive infection, that kind of thing. And essentially what we found is that the antibiotics kill off not only the bad guys in your gut, but they can kill off the good guys as well. And that's bad can be bad if you're a cancer patient.
Right. Why is that? Because that will affect growth of blood vessels?
It can potentially affect the growth of blood vessels, but it also can affect other processes that are going on in the cancer. We and others actually have found that if you reduce the diversity of the microbiota, it can accelerate the progression of the breast cancer. So it kind of speeds up the disease, and that's not good, right?
Right. But all this is at a very early stage, actually, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm not saying, if you're a breast cancer patient, I'm definitely not saying don't take antibiotics. They're life-saving things, right? You don't want that infection. No. That infection, that sepsis is going to kill you. But we need to figure out, what's happening. how are the antibiotics affecting the microbiota, and then how is that affecting the cancer, so that we can therapeutically intervene, right? Come in with a treatment that prevents that from happening. That's kind of where.
Now, this is fascinating, exciting, and it feels that we are at the start of a really exciting period of finding out more about the human body and how this stuff can really be useful to humanity. I mean, this is useful stuff you're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. For the first time in my scientific career, I actually feel like I've always been at the very basic end of research, and I could see the importance of what I was doing in the long term, in the grand scheme of science, but I kind of feel now I'm at the forefront of what's being done in microbiota research, and feeling like the stuff that I'm actually doing is going to, in my lifetime, affect patients.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I need to let people know that actually I've known Stephen for years, and I can see he is really excited about this stuff. He knows this has a very good chance of helping a lot of people. So, just with that in mind, if people are listening to this and they would like to find out something about this that's not based on hype, but is just where we are at the minute, what can they do, particularly if they're not a scientist and they want to read something that is makes sense to Joe Public?
I think I'd point them to. So my colleague Lindsay has recently been doing some television programs with ITV4.
Okay.
And they're really good at describing how early life microbiota might affect both health and disease, and I think it's a really good starting point for trying to understand what the microbiota is and what it might do.
Okay.
Right? And I'm not saying some of the hype is true, right? So, and it's a good entry point into understanding as a layperson what's going on. You need that entry point, but then delve deeper. Look at those scientific based programs that are being done by BBC, ITV4, those sorts of things. And then, if you're really interested go to public outreach events. We do a lot here at Quadrum Institute. Lindsay's done a lot with Royal Society and that kind of thing, where you can interface with scientists and get a better feel for what's going on.
Okay, and I will try and make sure that there's some links to those things just mentioned on my blog. Also, very important, if people are listening to this and they'd like to fund what you do, or even, if they are a scientist and they're working in this kind of field, or they'd like to work in this field and they'd like to contact you, how can they do that?
They can send me an email.
Okay.
And that is Stephen with a PH .Robinson at Quadrum, so QUADRAM.ac.uk.
Okay. All right. Stephen, look, thank you very much indeed for chatting. This really is very interesting stuff, so thank you.
Thank you.
Please do remember that if you have any questions or comments about any of the topics on this show, you can ask the questions, make the comments on my blog. That's on the website, which is relaxbackuk.com. Also on that blog, there's an opportunity to enter a competition to win an active stand. And an active stand is a board that you can stand on while you're working at your desk, and it simulates a nice, gentle stroll. So it keeps you moving, keeps you happy, keeps you healthy. So do have a look at that. Have a look at the photos and enter the competition to try and win one for yourself. Certainly worthwhile doing that. Thank you very much to my guests on the show this week. They were Amanda Hamilton and Dr. Stephen Robinson. And of course, thank you to you for listening.
That was Mike Dilk of Relax Back UK. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next time.